Thermaltake is at it again with another budget-orientated case, this time the Versa H18 Micro-ATX enclosure for just 49 Aussie and US. Can a case so cheap really be any good? Let's find out. Size-wise, this case is 390mm high, 205mm wide and 380mm deep, and weighing in at just 4.6 kilos. Let's move on to the tour. At the front we have a plastic panel with metal venting, which will be a big enough help with airflow but is fine enough to catch most dust. For I/O we have a large power button, a hard drive activity light, a single USB 3.0, two USB 2.0s, headphone and microphone jacks, a reset switch and an LED button which will turn on the blue LED strip inside the glossy plastic along the right hand side of this panel. Why blue of all colours? I have no idea, but I would have preferred just plain white. Removing the front panel reveals the I/O is actually attached to this piece via two screws, meaning you won't be able to remove it entirely without a bit of stuffing about. Also, you will notice there is no dust filter inside, just fine mesh, making cleaning of this area a little bit harder. The H17 model has the I/O on top of the case with a different power button and a mostly closed off fake brushed metal front cover with a small amount of venting either side and a Thermaltake badge near the bottom right hand side corner. These are the only differences between the H17 and H18 model that I can tell, as the interior layout looks identical. Behind the front panel there is room for up to two 140 or three 120mm fans with height adjustment available using the elongated holes. You can fit up to a 60mm thick radiator on the inside if you place the fans between the case and the panel, which I would only recommend on the H18 model. If not, your radiator support will be restricted by your chosen fan's thickness. On the left hand side is a metal side panel with an acrylic window held on by two non-captive thumb screws, so try not to lose those. The panel itself is quite sturdy with minimal flex, which is good to see. At the rear we find the motherboard I/O cutout, a 120mm fan mount with radiator support and height adjustment that has the one and only included fan, which can be connected by a 3-pin header. Below that is 4 PCI brackets with one of these stupid sliding mechanisms, and finally a nice and large ATX power supply cutout which is inbuilt to the case, meaning you'll have to install your power supply from the inside. On the right hand side is a solid flat black metal panel, again with very little flex, and is held on by two non-captive thumb screws also. On top is mounting for a single 120 or 140mm fan with an included magnetic dust filter, which is good to see. You will only be able to mount a fan up here, as anything thicker such as a rad will most likely clash with your motherboard. There is also Thermaltake branding at the front on top of the panel. Underneath is 4 large foam padded feet which raise the case plenty to allow for fresh airflow to the power supply. The included dust filter for this area is one of those horrible bits of mesh held on by a few metal tabs that is a real pain to reattach, but at least one is included. Also underneath is the screw access to attach a 3.5-inch hard drive to the inside floor of the case, but we'll get to that soon. Removing the windowed panel to get a look inside, we see a welcomed power supply basement area with large but subtle Thermaltake branding. There is a cutout to view your power supply, but oddly enough, once you attach the side panel you can only see the top third. I find it a bit of an odd design choice there. All motherboard standoffs are pre-installed thankfully, and 2 of them are extruded to help hold the motherboard in place while attaching the screws. Thank you Thermaltake. You can fit both mini ITX and Micro-ATX motherboards in this area. There is enough room at the top above your motherboard to feed your CPU power connector through, which is great to see, especially on a budget case. The CPU cooler clearance height is about 150mm, which will restrict you from using some of the larger tower air coolers. Graphics card length can be up to 380mm depending on fans or radiator setup, which is more than enough room. There are plenty of cutouts for cable routing and they all seem to be in the perfect spots, but do not feature rubber grommets, so you will have to work extra hard at making your cables tidy. On the right hand side of the wall is 2 slots available to mount 2.5-inch hard drives, which you do by first attaching 3 of these rubber stoppers, which are included in the screw kit. Then you slide the stoppers into the larger sections of the hole and slide towards the smaller side. Finally, you attach the 4th and final screw from the rear, where there is already a rubber stopper attached to the case. This is quite an interesting method to save costs by doing away with hard drive caddies or sleds. Please note you won't be able to fit SSDs at the front if you are using 140mm fans, as there isn't enough clearance between the two. Moving around to behind this area, it is possible to mount your SSDs on this side as well if you prefer to hide them rather than display them. You have 220mm of clearance for your power supply if you decide to use the bottom hard drive mount. Speaking of hard drives, you can fit 2 3.5-inch hard drives down here using the same method as the SSDs, with one being able to be mounted to the floor and the other to the underside of the power supply cover. Cable management is a breeze, with a huge amount of room in the basement area and plenty of space between the motherboard tray and the edge of the case to route everything cleanly. There are a few zip tie points to really clean up your cables and move them away from being visible through the cutouts. Building inside this case was just an enjoyable experience as there was just plenty of room for everything and I never felt limited. Cable management was a breeze and cleaned up nicely, although you could just shove them all in the basement and no one would ever know. Adding in an extra fan or two to the front is a must to get proper airflow across all your components. In conclusion, there really isn't anything negative to say about the H18, and when I look at the $49 price tag, I think Thermaltake did a great job to pack the features they have in a rock solid case with great airflow and an appealing design. For your next Micro-ATX build, I suggest you consider the Versa H18 for its good layout and solid build quality on a budget. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, and if you really enjoyed it, please consider subscribing for more reviews and other content in the future. If you have a suggestion, question or criticism, leave a comment, and thank you very much for watching.